delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. How did I get to this passage? You know, we were sitting down one night for supper, and not every night, but a lot of times when we're sitting around together, other people would join us, and we'll usually read something from the scripture. And it's later in the evening, and so by that time of the night, 8, 9 o'clock, people are kind of ready. They're, kind of be done for the day. They're not ready for a real long, message from the word, So I look for something short, and sometimes we bounce around a little bit. And this particular evening, I thought, I need something just kind of brief. I think we was about corn chopping a little before in there. And so I thought, I know Psalms 1's a good psalm. And so we went and reread that. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of mockers. And so as we're sitting at the table, a lot of times the words just go over your head. So I just do a real brief, if you want the blessing of God, don't live this way. And kind of just wound it up for the night. But it was in the back of my mind. Interesting enough, about a week or so later, John, wherever John went, John's over here, he's in the wrong spot. John brings the same passage up in Sunday school class and says, let's just do this one for today. Russ was gone that morning. So John led the study, and we just read through Psalm 1. So again, it's put in front of my mind about the blessing of God. Okay? And so then it's like that following week, we're chopping corn. And I'm unloading the wagon. So I pull up to the blower, and there's my friend, a guy I went to school with, hangs out a lot with us, okay? And it's really a bad time to talk, but he needed to get off his place, and his kid had brought him out. And so I'm up and down the tractor, okay? And he's got some health issues. He's worked on concrete, not as a concrete worker, but stood on concrete, and it's bothered his back, okay? And it's gotten so bad that he told me, he said, the doctors have given up on me, okay? So as this is going on in Greg's life, here I am. I hop off the tractor that I'm on, go over to put the PTO on, and I'm up and down these tractors. Move over this one, fire up the PTO and the throttle, jump back down, go over here. I'm back and forth going from one tractor to the other, up and down. And I'm thinking, wonder what goes through Greg's mind as he stands by the fence and he's kind of holding his back because his back hurts. And then I come back to this passage, what I read here this morning. Blessed is the man. And I thought, why is it that my back is good, and here is my friend with a sore back, and he's the same age as me, and he cannot work anymore? And the question crossed my mind, am I blessed? Has God blessed me? And it says in this passage, it says, blessed is a man who walketh not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners. And I started looking at my life and how I have lived, and I started looking at how my friend has lived. And I thought, has God blessed me because I've lived in following him? And then I immediately kind of rebuked myself, like, that is really arrogant, to think that somehow I have lived in such a way that God would see fit to bless me. But it made me to go back and look at this passage. And I want to go through this because it says, how do you get the blessing of God? And I'm inclined to believe that God has indeed blessed me, not because I'm worthy of it. Maybe it's just his mercy or his grace. But let's go back and take a look at this passage. What does it mean to be blessed by God? What does that word blessed mean? Does anybody want to throw a definition out? What does it mean to be blessed by God? Anybody got any answer you want to throw at me? You guys are all silent. Show favor. I like that one. Anybody else want to throw something else? If you're blessed by God, God would show his favor. Anything else? The joys? Okay. The joy. You know what? Actually, in one of the sources I look at, Vines, there, one of the definitions drew out is happy. Okay? And to be honest with you, I kind of, no, not just, because this isn't like God just dumps down happy on you. That's not what I agree with Arnie. It's like God's favor coming on you, God's help coming on you, God looking out for you, God going with you in those circumstances. That's the blessing of God, okay? It isn't just that you're happy, okay? But you want, as you go through life, that's what you want. You want the blessing of God. You want the good of God coming to you, God helping you in life. And so read here, there's three things that what I call the do nots. I keep want to call them donuts, but 3 do nots, okay? 3 don't do these things. And then there's 2 things to do if you want the blessing of God, okay? And so I'm going to give you a little bit longer version of what I gave at the table the other night, okay? It says, blessed is the man, and here's the first one. Here's the first do not. Who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. Okay? What's the counsel of the wicked? Okay? This illustration is maybe just a little bit coarse, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. When I was 14, there was a kid that moved into Hinckley School whose name was Scott. Okay? And Scott and I became kind of buddies. He was kind of a good-looking kid, not overly athletic, but he did all right. Sharp kid. He really could go places in life if he wanted to. And we would kind of team up sometimes in the hall. We didn't hang out a lot after school or anything like that, but we had a lot of classes together. And we just chummed, and there was times we kind of get in trouble together. I'd tell you a story about when I got him in trouble. But anyway, there's not enough time for that. But anyway, Scott and I hung out. But I remember at one time when I was 17, right about that time, and we were walking down a hall. And a gal I knew, it wasn't like she was my girlfriend or anything, just a gal I sort of was acquainted with, kind of had a little connection to, came up and started talking to me. And Scott's by my side, and she was not the most popular gal, okay? But as we're standing there talking, she walks away, and Scott said, he gave me some advice. He says, why don't you love her and leave her? Okay? And I was kind of appalled by that, okay? That's what the counsel or the advice of the ungodly is, okay? In this passage, it says, if you want to be blessed, don't walk in the counsel of the ungodly. And that is how I think Scott was fairly innocent when he came, when he was 14. By the time he was 17, I got to know what Scott's life was like. And that was kind of how Scott lived. He said, this is, kind of, we're guys, this is what we do, right? And that was his advice to me, okay? In this psalm, it says, blessed is the man or woman who is, if you have ungodly friends and they give you advice that you know is wrong, you will be blessed if you do not follow that advice. Stay away from that. Don't go down the path that they go. Okay? What's the second one? Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. Here's number 2. Or stand in the way of sinners. Okay, and this is a little confession from my life. There was an era in Julie and my life when the kids were pretty young, and I'd be farming through the week, and there was times that we would like to go out on the town. Where do you go out and get a good meal in Hinckley? No, I said a good meal. You go to the casino. Does anybody remember the $7.77 deals? You could get a prime rib for $7.77, and we would cash in. And we had a little, there was kind of and I think we felt it some here at Clover Church, should a Christian go to the casino? And we would go there, it's like, man, you get out, we'd clean up, I'd get rid of the dirt and grease, put on clean clothes, Julie would doll up a little bit, and it was, sometimes we'd grab friends, we'd go there and we'd have a good meal together. And then we weren't quite ready to go home, so we'd walk through, and we're not gamblers, okay? But we'd walk through, and we found out that in the back there was a lounge at that time, and there would be bands a lot of times playing. And we'd walk by, and I remember one particular night we were sitting there, was a group called the Fortunes playing, and it was kind of toe-tapping music, and we sat there for a little bit, and I said, let's go sit down. And I grew up, we stayed out of the bars and the lounges and stuff, right? Is that really sin to sit and listen to some, it was secular music, but it wasn't necessarily on God. So we got into this pattern. We didn't do it all the time. We found another guy whose name was Lippy, okay? And when he would come, the place would pack out. You could not just walk in and get a seat. You had to wait a set or two to get a seat, okay? And so we'd sat down, and I remember this one particular night, we were sitting there, we had another couple with us, and they're playing, and again, still in the back, there's this little twinge, do we really belong here? Because it's not really aimed or focused at God, right? It is a lounge, but we're sitting there just kind of enjoying, the guy was really fun to listen to. He had good choice of music or whatever. But he goes to this one, and he's playing this song, and all of a sudden, he gets to the end of the song or the end of the chorus, and the words were, talking about a gal, great God in heaven, you know I love you. Okay? He is not really seriously talking about God. It was kind of a casual oath. It's what you call a blasphemy. And in that moment, I looked at all the people. We were sitting there. You were all enjoying the music, bouncing along kind of with the two, And then he gets that, and he blasphemes. And everybody's just kind of enjoying this moment where this man is blaspheming God. And all of a sudden, gals talk about a hot flash. I had a hot flash. I mean, I just literally got just hot. And I felt really uncomfortable, and I wanted to run out of there. Because I knew in that moment, I don't know that this singer, really realized what he was doing. But as a Christian, I knew what he was doing. Here we are all making light, and this guy blasphemes the name of God, and no one thinks anything of it. Can I bring you back to this verse? It says, blessed is the man who does not stand in the way of sinners. Okay? There are events, there are things in life that are wrong. Okay? And when you join in with them, you become a part of them. And so when something is wrong or you need to separate yourself from that. Okay? And it says if you want to be blessed by God, separate yourself. Don't stand in the way of sinners. What is our number 3? I don't have a great illustration from my life, and this one's just going to be really short. It says, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly. That's number 1. Stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. There are people today who mock God, or who mock people who follow God. Okay? And if you want to be blessed, you don't mock God. You don't take those things lightly. You take them very serious. Okay? And so if you want the blessing of God, those are the things you push aside from your life. Okay? And now there are 2 things that you need to do. It says, but his delight, verse 2 there, his delight is in the law of the Lord. What's the law of the Lord? This, right? That's where your delight is. You read that, you take it in, and it says you meditate. That's the second thing. You delight in it and you meditate. You think about that. What happens when you read this and you meditate on it? It changes your life. Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. How do you transform your mind? You take the scriptures, you read it, and you think about it. Okay? If you want the blessing of God, God says, put this other stuff aside, take this here, start reading it, thinking about it, and putting it into practice in your life. And what's going to happen? You will receive the blessing of God. And it goes talk about what the blessing of God is like. Look at verse 3 there. It says, this person that does that, who puts that aside and starts to love God and follow his word, he says, he is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither. And whatever he does prospers. This last summer, we hit a period of drought, right? I should have maybe took a picture, I suppose, if I was real techie, and brought it for you. But if you were to look, we got an alfalfa field. You come around the corner of the road, and it was young alfalfa, okay? We'd planted it about 1 year ago in August. So that when it came into this year, the roots were short. Okay? When the drought came on, when things got really dry, we had cut the hay off, and then there was only about 2 places where it regrew. One was down in these the holes. There's a water hole right when you came around the corner, and it was lush green, and it was about almost knee high there. The other interesting thing was as you looked across the field, there was this diagonal green line, almost like a lightning, and it would V out like this. But the alfalfa, here's all like, it didn't even regrow some of it, okay? But when you would hit that spot, there's this bright green line. And the alfalfa was probably getting 12 inches, close to knee high there. And it was only about this wide. Why do you suppose that was? See, I asked myself that question. Why is it, it's green over here in the low spot, but it's also green out in these diagonal streaks? Apparently, there's a vein of water that runs zigzagging across the field. And it's kind of in like veins that go across the field. And that alfalfa has put its roots down and it's found the water. Okay? And so the only alfalfa that was green was alfalfa that had found water. Now this passage talks about trees. I could give you an illustration on trees and where they get green. You know, I'll give it to you. Stewartstown in Kansas about 6-7 years ago, it was so dry, all the trees dropped their leaves like in August, way early. He said, I don't even know if they're going to come back, if they're just dead and they're done. But what trees still had leaves on them? The trees along the water, the trees along the river. Okay? And this is a picture of a person who has their hopes and their thoughts and their desires in God. It's kind of like that alfalfa. When the trouble comes, they're the ones that continue on. They're the ones that stay green. They're the ones that prosper. Okay? Does it say that if you follow God that you will not get a drought in your life? No, the drought will come to you. The trouble will come to you for sure. But you will be the one, if you have your hope and your thoughts and your mind set on God, you will be the one who stands the test of time or stands through that moment of hardship because your roots are in God. What's it say in verse 4? Not so the wicked. They are like chaff which the wind blows away. I'm going to stop just with that. Remember the first fellow I told you about that came to school when we were 4, the guy that gave me the bad advice? You know, I wonder where because he was my friend. You know, as school went on, by the time we were 17, 18, we started to part ways. He was doing his thing, I was doing mine. And as maybe 20 years out of school, I'm asking, where's Scott? Anybody seen Scott? And nobody really seemed to know. And then word trickled back that there was a point that he had shot himself in the belly with a .22. Now, I don't know if that was a suicide attempt or if he was messed up on drugs. He was smart enough to know you don't commit suicide that way. Okay? But the sad thing is, later on, about 10 years ago, from what they tell me, is that he drank himself to death. What does it say there? What happens to the wicked? It says, not so the wicked. They are like chaff which the wind blows away. You know, this kid had so much going for him. If I look back to the time we were 14, what if he would have said, and I actually, as I was thinking and studying stuff, I really feel bad that I had not talked to him about the Lord. I was young in faith, and I never really directed. We hung out, like I said, but I never really put Jesus in front of him. What if he would have changed? What if he just set his mind on the Lord, set his desires? You know, I think he'd still be alive today. I feel really bad about that. But it says, not so the wicked. They are like the chaff which the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. See, there's a day coming when we will stand before God. And if you have put your roots into the Lord, if you have the Lord Jesus, you will stand not only in this life, but also in that assembly. When you come before God, you have a hope. You have forgiveness. You have salvation. That is there for you. Verse 6 says, for the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. There are three things that God says, the three goods that come out of that for the person that follows the Lord. In the first verse it says, blessed is the man. Okay? Blessed is the man. The Lord puts his good on you. In those days of trouble, God will go with you. God will help you through those moments. The second thing is It says in verse 3 there, actually, at the end of verse 3, it says, whatever he does will prosper. Okay? If you put your hope in God, if you set your thoughts on following God and committing your way to him, I think you can take that as a promise. Whatever he does will prosper. You know, I'm just thinking about that in farming. Okay? When I go out and plant a crop of corn in the spring, I want it to prosper, right? And so I will till it right. I will find a good seed to put in that ground. I will put lots of fertilizer, right? We know that fertilizer makes your crop to prosper. What does this psalm say that will make your crop prosper? If you follow the Lord. You don't find that in the magazines that you read about in successful farming. It doesn't talk about following the God to make your crops prosper. But as you read this in Psalms, right there in verse 3, the end of it says, whatever he does prospers. And I'm sure there's going to be times when we have bad crops or failures. But I look at this last summer, and I'm thinking, why do I have a corn crop? It was a bad summer. But twice, God brought rain at really critical points, and we've got a good crop. Has God caused me to prosper? Has God caused my corn to prosper? I would say yes. I don't know that I deserve it. I've had to ask a lot of forgiveness over the past, how many months? Just different things. But my hope, my thoughts are in the Lord. And so God says, blessed is a man who was not walking in counsel. And then in verse 3, it says, whatever he does prospers. What does verse 6 say? The Lord watches over the way of the righteous. Okay? Do you guys want to be blessed in life? Who's your hope? Who are you following in life? It says, read the Word of God, put that in your mind, follow the Lord with that, and you will be blessed. And I take that to the bank. I take that seriously. God is the one that blesses us in life. There's a lot of people, I think of my friend with the bad back, and I wish for him, I pray for him quite a bit. I pray that, his heart would be turned to the Lord. He's got a bad back. The doctors can't help it, but who can? God can, if he'll humble himself and turn to the Lord. Will God, are we guaranteed that will happen? No, but that's sure where I would start. God is the one we trust in.